Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. Yesterday we had the federal leaders French debate, and today I want to go over it with you guys and give a letter grade to how I think each of the individual leaders did, and then talk about how I think this is going to affect the overall election. I also want to discuss the frankly embarrassing press conference that Mark Carney had after the debate, where he got cornered by conservative independent media journalists and couldn't answer the most basic questions or gave really stupid answers to things that he should be frankly trying to dodge on, like what he thinks about Justin Trudeau's time as prime minister. So we're going to go in ascending order from who I think is the least relevant person on the debate stage to the most relevant person. So that will be Jagmeet Singh, Blanchett, Pierre Poilievre, then Mark Carney, and then I will be talking about how I think it's going to affect the election. Then we will be moving on to that press conference that happened afterwards with Mark Carney. So, Jagmeet Singh, why is he even there? The man didn't even seem to want to be on stage to debate the actual big election issues. All he wanted to do was talk about healthcare and try and thrash Pierre Poilievre. That was it. He doesn't understand why the NDP even exists, it seems. Also, isn't Mark Carney and the Liberals currently the government of Canada? He should be attacking Mark Carney. But instead, it was kind of like a debate where it was Mark Carney and Jagmeet Singh teaming up against Pierre Poilievre and Yves-Francois Blanchett. It was very strange, and if anything, you can kind of see the two different governments that might form out of this federal election. It would be NDP Liberal, or it's going to be Conservative Bloc Québécois if a minority government is only won by the Liberals or the Conservatives. Jagmeet Singh, his French is fine. I do not speak a lick of French. I am just basing this on the commentary of fluent French speakers on social media yesterday, like, what's his name? I don't want to mess it up here. He has a great sounding name, Sylvain Charlebois. I'm basing it off of his commentary on the French skills of the different leaders. Jagmeet Singh's French is fine. It's nothing to write home about. It's not what you would describe as great, but it's serviceable for the debate. He can actually answer questions that he wasn't pre-prepared for. He can have debates with the different leaders. And other than the fact that he would randomly attack Poilievre for things when he should be going after Mark Carney, nothing. He would keep redirecting things to healthcare. He ranted on about Gaza and genocide. He didn't even need to be there. Okay, I give Jagmeet Singh a D. He absolutely was a waste of time. Now, Yves-Francois Blanchett. He is actually a very important figure in this election. So the other three people I'm talking about here, Blanchett, Poilievre, and Carney, are very relevant to the debate. I could almost say that they're pretty much all almost equally relevant. But Blanchett did what he had to do, in my opinion. And if you're looking for a debate winner, it's probably Blanchett. And we're going to get to why I actually think it's good for Blanchett to be the debate winner over Pierre Poilievre. But Blanchett generally ended up distinguishing himself as the Quebecers champion. That's a good thing if you don't want the Liberals to win. He generally took the middle ground between Poilievre and Carney on a lot of issues, or he even tacked himself a little bit more to the left and criticized Carney as not having been like past Liberals and he's too conservative and whatnot. Doesn't really matter what the points were, but I would say that he generally stuck up for a very militant French position. And so that is actually going to serve him well, because what Blanchett really needs to do is just gird up the places that the BQ already hold. The Bloc have a lot of ridings that they won back in 2021. They got 8% of the vote, or 7.5%. That's a high watermark for the Bloc, because that was like 37, 38% of the vote back in 2021. And so what he did here in debating against Mark Carney and going on the attack on things like immigration, on things like resource development, rejecting nuclear reactor plans and whatnot, which a lot of French people do not like, he basically solidified himself as the guy who is going to push back against an overly aggressive federal government. And if you don't like this Mark Carney guy, then I'm your next best choice. So I would give Blanchett an A for his goals. He had generally achieved them, even if I don't agree with any of his positions. So then we have Pierre Poilievre. I think Pierre Poilievre did quite well. He didn't go on the attack as much as maybe I would have suggested, but I understand the strategy. What Pierre Poilievre is trying to do is take some small jabs at Mark Carney, make himself seem like a likable person, generally speaking, make sure he can gird up the ridings that the Conservatives already own, but there really isn't many gains to be made in Quebec for the Conservatives. For the Conservatives to gain seats, they would need to gain like another 10% of the vote in Quebec, because Quebec is a very particular place in the sense that when you're in Quebec, you would understand that there are regions that vote Conservative, there are regions that vote Bloc, and there are regions that vote Liberal. It is actually a lot like New Brunswick for the exact same reasons. There is Anglo parts of New Brunswick, there are French parts of New Brunswick. Obviously, all of Quebec is French, but there are very specific regions that have very specific interests. Montreal is the island of red. It is the liberal island in Quebec. And then you have all the rural areas and the suburban areas outside of Quebec and Quebec City, and those are Bloc. And then you have a couple ridings in Quebec City, and then you have the ridings that are along the border with the US that are conservative, and that's pretty much it. And there is one NDP riding that you don't need to care about. So what Poilievre is doing is just making sure he maintains his Quebec support, because there's no point in launching this debate and taking big risks to gain 3 or 4% of the vote that doesn't even result in another riding. So he mostly stuck out of it. He had some good jabs on Carney, going after him for basically trying to propose that having a fourth Liberal term will be what the secret sauce that Canada needs to get back ahead. He stumped Carney a few times, pushed him into the corner, made Carney seem awkward. Carney's French is also not great, so oftentimes when he's responding to people on things that he wasn't expected to be asked, he uses the wrong word. He uses awkward phrasing to express himself. It's not technically wrong. It's just weird on the ears. And so what I would give Poilievre is a B minus. But I think that Poilievre just wanted to achieve that B minus because he will probably be keeping most of his attacks, his really, really big attacks, for English. Because if he put them all out there in French, what does he have to gain? 3 or 4% in Quebec, that's really not going to do him any good in terms of the seat count. And then Carney knows exactly what he's going to hit him on in English. He mostly stuck to just seeming like a good guy that people can be comfortable with as the prime minister. Don't come off as pompous, don't come off as too cocky, because that is generally the media narrative about Poilievre. He's too much like Trump. He's braggadocious, he's pompous, he's cocky. So he basically toned it down, just seemed like a nice guy on stage that if this Mark Carney guy fails, maybe you can vote for me. But in fact, he actually wants people to vote probably for the Bloc Québécois, because that's how you keep the Liberals down. So now we are getting into Mark Carney. The CBC legacy media outlets will say he did a great job. He did not do a good job. Was it an F performance? No. Was it a D performance? No. It was a C performance. But the problem is that the Liberals have a lot of soft support on their sides, especially in places like Quebec. Will the Liberals do well in Montreal? Yes. And this debate performance, like Mark Carney, will make sure that the Liberals do well in Montreal. And that is it. This was a debate performance where not only was his French bad, which is going to alienate a lot of the people who are Bloc liberal swing voters who really care about the quality of her French. I know people keep saying, it doesn't matter that much. Ignatia fell on his face because he spoke Parisian-style French. That is enough to tick off voters in Quebec. And you think that Carney, not being able to really engage on many of the topics, having to go back to talking points he's memorized rather than responding to something one of the other leaders directly said to him, makes him look good? No, it does not. Again, so I'd give him a C minus. His positions on immigration and whatnot were not very good. He was called out by Blanchett and Poilievre for his support of the Century Initiative, for wanting to radically increase immigration. He seemed to take a less than a middle ground approach when it came to taxes. His tax proposals are kind of flabby compared to the NDP and the Conservatives, who want to cut way more taxes than the Liberals, but then he's not even in favor of supporting social services as much as Blanchett. So he's kind of the leader for Montrealers, for those middle ground metropolitan Liberals. And again, I'm speaking in generalities. I watched the debate twice with the English dub, so I could go into specific issues on foreign policy, on energy, and stuff like that. Carney was very mealy-mouthed on saying that we need new energy projects, but then Blanchett would say, well, you want to force them on Quebec. Mark Carney would kind of like go into himself a little bit, and he would not actually make a good argument for how we can get the energy projects through if there's any challenges from Quebec or Indigenous groups. I can go into all that. His answers were just okay. They're just okay. And again, he needed better than an okay. He needed better than an okay performance because, like I've said, the Liberal support is very soft. When you look at Angus Reid's polling, even though I think they oversample Liberals, their supporters polls should be generally good in terms of when you poll supporters of the Liberals, how likely are they to show up? 63% of them in their last poll rated themselves as very committed to voting Liberal, which means just over a third of Liberals are not actually sure if they're actually going to show up and vote Liberal. And I think this debate performance basically made a lot of the people who were only leaning or thinking about it saying, I'll vote Bloc again. And that's the problem, is that he did a good debate performance to hold on to what he had, but he needed to expand past that, and he never beat Blanchett. He never beat Poilievre, and he didn't even beat Jagmeet Singh on any of the topics. He just seemed okay. He seemed serviceable, plus his French sucked. So I would say that he deserves a C or a C minus. It wasn't something that did him any favors. I know people pretend like because he's ahead in many polls, that means he just needed to maintain his ground, and that's why the CBC is giving him a golf clap saying, oh, well, again, he didn't have his pants fall down, and he generally defended himself okay, so that means it's good. I'm like, no, he needed to prove that he is the figure the media says he is, because they pretend that this guy is a marvel. He's fantastic. He's a great businessman. He's a great economist, and he's who the country needs. He didn't live up to those expectations. Yes, people didn't think he was going to do well in the French debate, but they thought his French would just be the thing holding him back. His answers sucked too. That's the problem. His French was not very good, and his answers were very, very lackluster. Like, there's this great, silly quote from him at the very beginning where he said, well, I know how to deal with Trump because I know how to negotiate. It's like, oh my goodness, it's such just an empty thing to say. I have to believe that the average Canadian, when they hear that, they're like, kind of roll their eyes. It's like, well, I'm the right person to fight this war because I'm good at fighting. Oh, I should be doing this because I'm good at that thing. Okay, dude. Anyways, so how do I think this is generally going to affect the race? I think the effect is not much an effect from 2021. If the Liberals were in the mid-40s to low 40s at the beginning of this debate, I think they're now in the high 30s. I think this hurt them. It did not mean that it was a full rout and they're going to start losing half of Montreal. It's very difficult for the Liberals to lose anything in Montreal. They'll regain the seat they lost in La Salle Marde Verdun, and that's pretty much it. They might get another suburb outside where they're having a knife fight with the Bloc, but there was nothing here that would give me confidence that the Liberals are going to hold on to what the polling currently has them in Quebec. I think that they were going to be able to achieve those numbers if he truly showed up with strong French and strong answers, and both were bleh. So I think that this was a very good debate for the Conservatives. They didn't need to win the debate. They just needed to make sure that Mark Carney did not win, and he did not win. So now I want to go into the press conference that happened after the debate. And yeah, so this was kind of the best part of the night, was Mark Carney having to answer questions from independent conservative media journalists, and he did not perform very well.
So Alex Sultan with True North. If you thought my friend's question was odd, you're going to love this one.
I'm glad you self-assessed that. Okay.
How many genders are there?
There, in terms of sex, there are two. Thank you.
I like how even a liberal, when he thinks about it for a little bit there, has to know that there's two genders. He has to say it because even he knows. To the moderate voter in Canada, that's an insane thing for him to say, well, there could be thousands of them.
My follow-up question then, do you believe that women, biological women, have the right to their own spaces, their own sports, their own change rooms, their own prisons, their own homeless shelters?
I think this is Canada, and that as a general objective, yes. But we work where we value all Canadians for who they are, and we'll continue to do so. Thank you very much.
Some sort of women's rights organization needs to take an ad out and just play that everywhere. That's pathetic that it has to be this mealy mouth. Well, yeah, generally speaking, women do have their own spaces, but who's to say? Who's to say if somebody's a woman or not when they show up to a shelter space or some sort of crisis center? It does matter to actual women if they get their own spaces or not, if they get their own bathrooms. Here's another question that was asked to Mark Carney, this time by Cian Bexty, on whether or not Mark Carney thinks that Justin Trudeau is a good prime minister. And I think this is an excellent question to be asking him.
Hi, Mr. Carney, Cian Bexty, Juno News. In your estimation, was Justin Trudeau a good prime minister?
Justin Trudeau and the previous administration made a number of contributions to this country.
What does that even mean? That's a terrible answer. Well, made many contributions. Were they good or bad? And the thing is that you served with the man for 5 years, and this is why he can't distance himself. He can't say he's a bad prime minister because he was the one advising him for half the term. And so now he has to have this mealy mouth kind of, well, he's good and he had contributions and there were, there's things happened.
I suspect since I have 10 minutes, I think, right, for the responses, I'm not going to enumerate them all. I'll make one point which I think is relevant on the way looking forward, which is, as I said the other night in an interview, he and I, we share the same values in terms of solidarity, taking care of one another. The emphasis on reconciliation, emphasis on equality of all Canadians, and building a better country for everyone else. The difference, one of the differences, there are many, but one of the differences between the two of us goes to the question I was just asked, which is I put much more emphasis on the economy, on growing the economy. In fact, in this.
How did Justin Trudeau fail to value the economy when you were the economic advisor for 5 years? Did you not get through to him? That's the problem. That's the funny thing about the debate where he's saying, oh, I can negotiate with Trump because I have experience negotiating. I'm a good negotiator. How did you not get Justin Trudeau to listen to reason then? You had 5 years to do it and it never happened.
This circumstance that we're in, given the scale of the crisis and what needs to be done, I would say a relentless focus on growing the economy to work for all Canadians.
Just to follow up, if I may, your entire campaign does seem to be predicated on putting you in the front and hiding the people that stood in lockstep with Justin Trudeau for the last 10 years. You're kind of hoping that Canadians won't connect the dots, that the people standing behind you in your caucus walked in lockstep with him. Regardless of what you say right now, Stephen Guilbeault made the carbon taxes life work. The man that moved Paul Bernardo from a maximum security prison is now your chief of staff. I'm wondering how you reconcile this and how you can trust their judgment when they thought those ideas were good ideas.
I'd say a couple of things to that rather odd question.
It's not an odd question at all. That's actually a very good description of the campaign. He's going to go into it in a second saying, well, I always have these people standing behind me at my press conferences. The whole point is that they're pretending like, no, don't think about the government. Don't think about the government's record. Think about Carney's lack of record and the fact that you can fill him with your hopes and dreams and just pretend that he's your savior here.
First is that the candidates in this election for the Liberal Party, I mean, you go and see when I make an announcement. I don't think I've seen you at any of them, but next time you can come.
By the way, right there, Cian Bexty says you've kicked me out of all of them.
And you will see a wide range of the candidates that are there presenting themselves. So, for example, with respect to our announcement on crime.
Okay, well, pause there, but I think that's a good place to pause it anyways. But yeah, that's just terrible. Who did not brief Mark Carney that there was going to be independent media there, and through the lottery of who got to ask questions, he was going to be asked a question by somebody like Cian Bexty or Alex Zoltan. You think you're going to be able to deal with Trump when you cannot deal with independent conservative media asking you not even like nasty questions, just, unkind questions, just questions that don't take you at face value, and they want you to justify yourself or say something that you seem to be unwilling to say, because his answer on gender theory or on basically like, do you believe in two genders, was pathetic, because he'll say it after kind of mealy mouth saying, well, are we talking about biological sex? No. We want to know what you actually tell people when it comes to like when we have Pride Month. Because on Pride Month, you're going to have Mark Carney talking about people of all genders. What does that mean? What does that mean? And are women's spaces actually for women? He can't answer that stuff straight up. He has to qualify it. Are we talking about biological sex? No. How many genders do you think there are? Because the fact that you think there might be more than two is scary to us. Well, in biological, they're not two different things. They're literally the same thing. And well, you mean biological sex? You mean gender? Yes. The answer is yes. We mean both because they're the same thing. But he has to qualify it because he doesn't think they're the same thing because he's insane. Anyway, so that should be it for me today, guys. That was the French debate review. Hopefully I didn't just skim over it too much. It's hard. I didn't want to play clips of it because there's not really much to show. It was just that Mark Carney was, there was no blow up. Nobody fell on their face. Poilievre really pushed him into the corner on the fourth Liberal term question, in which Carney had this very awkward response. Well, I just arrived, which is literally his wording in French and what it means. It's a very awkward way of responding to the fact that people should be okay with a fourth Liberal term because I just arrived, I just showed up. You were the economic advisor for 5 years, and that was emphasized multiple times up to that point, and he's pretending to be a fresh face. Overall, though, there wasn't really many big moments, but if you are a French voter, I would suspect that you weren't super impressed with Carney. Again, are the Liberals going to fall from 43% in Quebec to 18%? No. They'll fall from 43 to 38 or 37, but that's only going to be enough to basically win Montreal because that is the area of Quebec where the Liberals win it by 55, 56%, 60% in some of these ridings, which means they do far less well outside of the island of Montreal. So for the Liberals to actually start picking up a lot of seats outside of Montreal, they need to be at like 45% or 46 or 47%. So I think this debate did good things for the Bloc. It stabilized Poilievre in the mind of many Quebecers, and it made probably a lot of people doubt whether or not Mark Carney should be the prime minister if you live in Quebec. So anyways, that's it for me today, guys. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, do all that great stuff, and I'll see you next time.